One market that every XRP holder is aware of is the derivatives market. This is a market that everyone has been waiting to just have on-chain because of the value that it brings with it. Now, in this video, I specifically want to talk about all of the connections that Ripple and XRP both have back to the derivatives market and what it could actually mean for the price of XRP. So with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. First and foremost, I want to start off with a recent announcement that was, of course, the CME Group to launch XRP futures trading on May 19th of this year. Now, this is big because on the topic of derivatives, the CME Group is a leading derivatives marketplace. In fact, they are the world's leading derivatives marketplace. And what's interesting about them is that it's not just XRP that is going to be added to their platform for futures trading. They also have Solana and I believe HBAR tied back to the CME Group. So this is actually very exciting to see, and it's showing us that these big players that are very well giants, if you want to really kind of name them that in the TradFi world, they're aware of how big the crypto space will be there. Aware of how big some of these utility giants will be, like XRP as well, and they want a piece of the pie. Now, when I think about some of these names, I also think about what they recently announced. And if we go back to March, we know that there was a huge announcement with CME Group and Google Cloud, where we have Justin derivatives trading giant CME Group teams up with Aztec giant Google Cloud to test tokenization later this year with plans to launch services in 2026. But these are the types of announcements I think everyone should pay attention to, because even though it doesn't mention, what platform they're using or what DLT specifically, even if it doesn't mention XRP, the thing that I want you guys to understand is this is money and value that will touch this space. It doesn't even have to touch XRP. This is one of the biggest misconceptions, right? Like, for an example, if there was an announcement like around Bitcoin, and I really utilized the ETF craze as a perfect example of this. Back in January of 2024, the ETFs went live for Bitcoin, and what was good for Bitcoin was very good for the entire space. The same goes with this, right? If we are going to see hundreds of trillions of dollars to even quadrillions of dollars flooding on chain, not all at once, but over time, that's very beneficial for the entire crypto space. And I do think that, there's going to be more and more of these announcements. We even, know that the DTCC, for an example, on April 2nd, announced that they were going to launch a tokenized collateral platform. And the DTCC is an absolute massive name. I mean, if you know about derivatives and if you know about the securities transactions, then you already know how much money the DTCC is moving. But if you don't know, well, let's take a quick look, because on the 24th, just recently, we got an update on the fact that the DTCC processed a record volume across services amid market volatility. This was on April 9th. They hit a new peak of $5,550 billion, 0 cents in one single day. Now, this is where things get interesting, because we now have updated amounts on how much the DTCC is moving every single year. In 2024, DTCC subsidiaries processed securities transactions valued at $3.7 quadrillion. This is insane. This is a massive amount of money. And it's, an amount of money that a lot of people actually don't even realize is out there. So this is why we focus on derivatives. In fact, I made a post going all the way back to 2023, and I did say if you take a second to think about the power behind tokenization, you could understand the value that will hit this market. So $300+ trillion in real estate, $100+ trillion in equities, $300+ trillion in debt market, $600 trillion to $1.2 quadrillion for derivatives, securities financing repurchase for trillion, securities lending $2.9 trillion. Like, when we're thinking about how much money is set to flow through this space, it doesn't matter if they're using just XRP or if they're using Ethereum or if they're using this network, that network. The amounts of money that is going to be bridged between all of these networks in this space, because it's going to be a multi-chain future. The amount of money that's going to be processed through this entire space will affect every single legitimate utility-based project. This is why we focus on what these names are doing, and every single one of them, from the CME Group to the DTCC to the BIS to the IMF, every global organization, every massive giant around money is talking about tokenization, and even the ISDA, back in 2023, announced digital asset standards. This is a derivatives industry body, the same industry body that Ripple became a part of also back in 2023. And the names that are tied back to the ISDA include like BlackRock, JP Morgan City, could, any bank out there name them probably a part of the ISDA. Now, a lot of people are immediately saying, well, this positions XRP to, facilitate $1.2 quadrillion. No, don't get too far ahead of yourselves. What's good about this is that, yes, it does put Ripple on the map. And yes, this also does create, a bridge to the derivatives market. This is very beneficial for Ripple and XRP. But we have no announcement just yet around derivatives with the ISDA, with the XRP ledger. But one thing that we do know is that the ISDA, through their legal guidelines for smart derivatives contracts, did outline the fact that derivatives are fertile territory for the application of smart contracts and distributed ledger technology, because their main payments and deliveries are heavily dependent on conditional logic. However, these technologies are at a relatively early stage of development, and there's still a lack of agreement on what smart contracts, what a smart contract is, what role these technologies can play in the derivatives market, and how these technologies might interact with existing legal standards and documentation. Now, we do know that DLT can help with many things. The biggest thing about derivatives is the lack of transparency. There's absolutely zero transparency around the derivatives market. That's why they don't actually understand how much money is tied to it. On top of that, it's still plagued with the same inefficiencies as traditional financial payments or cross-border payments. So again, I still think that there is a massive use case here for DLT. And on top of that, we also have over here from the ISDA where they outline the interaction between different agreements, where you have BLTs tapped in on the bottom with nodes, oracles, and even participants. This is how they bridge on both sides, from like the TradFi side and even like the DeFi side, if you will. But again, you could see that some of these massive, these are massive names. Like the ISDA is one of the biggest names around derivatives because this is a standard body behind it, which leads me to my next area of conversation. Where does Ripple really kind of play a role here? Because we know that Ripple is a part of the ISDA. That's great news, but what else is Ripple kind of doing here? Well, let's go back in time a little bit to the Robinhood and Bitstamp news. Jungle Inc. recently made a post on X, and this was on April 20th. We have Bitstamp and Robinhood are wiring a full-scale crypto derivatives exchange straight onto the XRP ledger. And yes, they are doing this. Global crypto derivatives already clear $4,800,000,000 0 cents a month. That's 70% of all digital asset volume. Snagging just 1% of that flow equals 1 to 2 billion in trades every single day, funneled through the XRP ledger in seconds. Every contract settles on